Hi, everyone. Hope you're doing really well. I feel like I've forgotten how to go live because I haven't been doing it as much as much recently. And so I forgot to even add my video to the stream, but here I am. Thanks for joining me wherever you're joining in from, whether it's YouTube, LinkedIn, whatever it is, say hello. And I just wanted to jump in and talk about the circular economy. It's a topic I love, and it's not just to go into the detail about what a circular economy is, but really to talk about and explore the opportunity for businesses and, fundamentally our economy. Because the great thing about this concept is it isn't just about reducing our impact through efficiency measures and looking at our energy and our resource consumption and our waste production. It's about creating value through the value chain, where we would normally just get rid of the waste. We would normally get rid of the waste, or we would put it aside, or we may try to sell it at a waste site. It's not always given a lot of value, but now what we're starting to hear more and more from some of the greatest minds and speakers in this space, that there's a lot of value to be had from waste systems, are typically seen as waste systems, because now we're starting to view them as basically resource hubs. And so what the circular economy does is it creates this loop, or really two key loops. One is about how do we reuse the technical items in our system. When I say technical, what I mean to say is non-biological items that have been created and made by us. How do we keep them in loop for as long as possible? And that means to follow things hierarchically. So not just keeping them in loop through measures like recycling, but actually be even before that, how do we sort of avoid them being wasted in the first place, or avoid buying the things unnecessarily in the first place, and look at the reuse and efficiency models early on in this loop so that we keep things in circulation for as long as possible. And the other side of that loop is, how do we then also regenerate the environment that we're taking from too frequently without replenishing? So how do we keep the biological items, things that are biological, obviously degradable, that belong to nature, how do we keep them in the environment for as long as possible? And while doing that, also start to replenish or regenerate nature that we have depleted way too heavily for so long. And so that's the idea of the circular economy in terms of the overall view. And typically it is seen as a microeconomic system, but now you're seeing countries that are applying it at a macro scale, and they're not just talking about this idea of a circular economy that was sort of originally developed. It's now really, when we say circular economy, we're thinking of this coupled idea around circular economics as well as donut economics. So if you haven't heard the term donut economics, that's about thinking things at a macro scale. So not just about how within a particular microeconomy, how do we keep items in the technical and biological loops, how do we keep them going or keep them in loop, but it's actually also about at a macro scale when we're starting to impact things like biodiversity loss and air pollution, ozone layer depletion, climate change, all of those things. How do we then start to look at the impacts of that at a bigger scale in both our country as well as the global system, essentially? And how do we avoid overshooting those ecological barriers? Because once we start to overshoot some of those ecological barriers, there's really no going back. And so that's the idea of bringing in donut economics thinking, which is at a macro scale. And then I guess fundamentally at the root of this entire system of thinking is to not only distribute our resources better, right, through these better design loops and moving away from a linear model, it's also about regeneration. So, that's really what the biological cycle is about. Well, yes, that's the idea, is how do we regenerate our planet while also keeping things in distribution for longer, and to essentially result in a much more equitable society. So a society where there isn't pay disparity and living conditions disparity and disparity in all of these sort of basic human needs across housing, health, education, clothing, all of these things, right? We shouldn't see that there is a society where people are not getting access to these things. And so that's the other part of what this system is all about. So really the circular economy is so much more complex than we, I guess, originally considered. And for a long time, it's been thought of as a improved waste management solution, but it's of course well beyond that. And it's much deeper than just about waste management. It really fundamentally is about creating value in the economy while also helping people who don't have access to some of the basic human needs and rights that they have as human beings. So sorry, I'm just checking that the live is all good. It seems like it is. So, feel free to ask any questions. Even if you ask them post this live, I'll be sure to try to answer them. But yeah, that's what I wanted to really come in and speak about today, and really talk about, I think, the value that this brings to all economies, both at an individual economic scale, even at a micro scale, a national scale, but also at a global scale. There is a lot of value to be had in a circular economy. And even when there was a recent study done, I think it was by KPMG for Australia, and the value that a circular economy can bring, it's anywhere in the mark of $25 billion over the next 5 years that it can bring into our economy. And our economy, for the scale of that kind of revenue, is huge. It's huge GDP growth for our economy. And so it clearly shows that while we are being sustainable and thinking better and more consciously about what we buy, when we buy it, how we use it, we can also still make money. We can also still bring economic value into our commercial systems. And so that's I think, the fundamental beauty of a circular economy. And so just like these talks that have been happening for many years, now decades, about carbon, and then now we've started to talk about ESG, and more recently the circular economy, all of these things are being brought into legislative and political regulatory systems. And so it's no longer time, we should really learn, I guess, is what I'm getting at, is we should really learn from what history has shown us, which is that if we wait too long, we're going to get left behind. We're going to be left scrambling to try to catch up, because legislation has come in really quickly, overnight almost in some places, to say you need to be reporting on your circular economy in this instance. The same we've seen has happened with the carbon economy. The same we've seen is happening with ESG. And so question is, what's your business doing? Is your business going to wait until it's absolutely necessary, or are you going to look at history and then learn from these ideas, learn from these experiences that we've seen, that legislation can come in overnight and have such huge impacts on your business? So why not get on the front foot, not only because you don't want to be left scrambling, but more importantly, you want to benefit from the value that this kind of system of thinking can really bring to your business and to your operations. But I think what many businesses worry about is some of the kind of upfront or inherent risks, which is that it will, of course, have an initial capital cost. There will definitely be disruption to the way that things are usually done in the business, and it will certainly start to change your operational relationships, your supply chain relationships. And so that transition process, that change process, there's a lot of resistance to that, because businesses worry about, will we be able to survive through that? Will our stakeholders be satisfied through that process? But what they are not seeing is that actually many of the stakeholders want this. They want the businesses to be leading the way, just like businesses want corporates to be leading the way and corporates want governments to be leading the way. it's just perspective, and it's just from our point of perspective that we think in this way. But what I feel is each group has a role to play. It's not just the government, it's not just the businesses, it's not just the individuals. Everybody has a role to play in this. And so not only do they have a role to play in this, they have an opportunity to benefit from it. So why wait is my point. So yes, I guess I want to leave it with that. If you haven't already been considering this in your business, or you have, but you're worried about that next step, or whatever, wherever you are, whatever's holding you from that next step, or that next big opportunity in this space, then break it down into a more digestible problem. What's the next smallest thing you can do to progress on your circular economy, your sustainability journey? What's that next thing that you can do? And if you're not sure what that next thing is that you could do, who can you speak to, and how can you open up this conversation and bring in a more diverse perspective into your business and into your life as well? That's the thought I would like to leave you all with. I hope that you found this valuable. Thank you for those who've joined me here on LinkedIn. I appreciate you being here. And I hope you all have an incredible day. Take care of yourselves. And again, share any questions or any thoughts that you do come up with along the way. Take care.